Well, thanks everyone. Love to go ahead and get started. Appreciate really looking forward to this webinar and really excited for the great turnout we already have, and looking forward to diving into a topic that I think is one that we're all thinking about and is one that is really just changing the way we work. And we think that Grain can be a part of how that change in work is happening and how you can, you know, increase your productivity with the skills and tools that AI is enabling, and how Grain can be a part of that, the AI agents specifically. So want to jump in, and I'll go over kind of quickly what our agenda looks like, and then we'll jump into some of the content here. So let me go ahead and share my, well, I'll share my screen and we can we can do a little bit of an introduction as well, so that people know who's on this call, but from the Grain team. So let me share. So I'll do little round of introductions, and then we can jump into these slides. So what we're going to be covering today is how you automate your work with Grain plus Claude. I'm Ben. I'm our head of operations here at Grain, and so my team and myself are, if you are reaching out about anything that you might need help with, or new features at Grain, we would be happy to help you. And I have two of my team members here with me today. We have Ella and Tebby. Tebby is our customer success lead, and uh, Ella leads our sales motion here at Grain, as our sales lead. Along with my team, we have Mike Adams, Grain's founder, as well as Jeff, Grain's founder and CEO. So really excited to have both of them today on this webinar, and looking forward to hearing from them later in the webinar. So that's who we have on the call today. Please use the chat for any questions. Ella and Tebby will be monitoring the chat if you have questions. We will have time at the end for a quick Q&A, but that's a great segue into what's our agenda look like today. So I'm going to cover a quick introduction to what we've introduced with Grain plus Claude. We'll cover a couple of the key capabilities, and then we'll get the opportunity to hear from Mike and Jeff as they walk through some of their use cases, and how they are currently using Grain plus Claude to create really powerful AI-powered work. And so we'll hear from them. We'll cover a couple real customer use cases that we've been hearing from customers recently, and building out some use cases from our customers, like yourselves, around how they're using Grain. We'll cover a couple of those, and then at the end we'll leave time for us, the Grain experts, to answer any questions. So section 5 there, quick Q&A. So that's our quick agenda. Really looking forward to getting into this. So what is the Grain connector for Claude? Real simply, what we've recently released is just a one-click connector into Claude. What you're able to do is use Grain's MCP inside of your Claude, as well as ChatGPT. Today we're going to be focusing mostly on Claude, but you can use the Grain MCP to do things like pull transcripts, pull notes, action items, clips, and then do that all on demand inside of Claude. What this enables is combining Grain with things like Slack, Gmail, HubSpot, Linear, and all the other connectors that Claude has. So we are a approved connector inside of Claude. They have what they call a connectors, connectors database, and you can now search and find Grain in there and one-click connect. This allows you to do things like scheduling recurring workflows and helps you to kind of just run work in Claude without you even doing anything. So we'll really cover those later in the conversation. So how we're thinking about Grain, and want to just kind of set the stage for the vision of Grain inside of Claude. So what we think Grain is Grain is the context layer for this agentic work. So I've built this. We have at Grain kind of a vision that there's kind of 5 stages, or that to using these agentic tools. So the first is kind of stage 1, which is the tools. So you have, using Claude and ChatGPT. These are, personal productivity things. We're generating emails. We are, asking questions, things like that. That's where we're using the AI tools. Then we can get into things that are called like workflows, where, we're seeing things be built in Gmail and Slack, and we're now able to kind of connect those, Claude and ChatGPT into some of our tools. And then there's kind of the context layer. So the challenge with 1 and 2 is they're one-off. They're not have the context that we sometimes need and see. Whereas when we add that context layer, which we believe comes from the meetings, is really where we're unable to unlock even more richer content that these AI LLMs can produce. So that's where we see GrainFit, is that we can become that context layer and help you enrich pretty much everything that you want to do inside. Meetings contain some of the most richly dense content and context about all of our companies, about all of our work we're doing. And Grain has all that. And so by able to connect Grain into these tools, you can now have that context layer. Once we have that context layer is we're able to create action. So now we're able to draft even more, rich workflows, and then it compounds. Once we get into creating those actions, we can compound, and every new conversation, everything gets smarter, and you're just able to move faster and quicker because AIs have that context. You now build those actions, and then you can compound the work and move faster. So that's how we think AI Grain is fitting into this agentic work, is as that context layer for just making things smarter. So this is part of the vision, but hopefully you see how we want to kind of enable your work as the context. So from here, I want to cover key capabilities of Grain. And we want to just highlight 4 kind of key capabilities that Grain and Claude, and this is really kind of stepping back more to like, what is this? What is Grain plus Claude? So one we've already talked about a little bit, which is what is this one-click setup? So like I said earlier, you can install Grain as a connector in Claude, sign in once, and your full meeting library is available to you in seconds. 2 is that it's access to your meeting data. Once Grain is connected, it is able to view the recordings that you have enabled. So just, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, what that meeting data is. 3 is it's now available in things like recurring co-work tasks. So now you can use Grain inside of reoccurring tasks. Because we are now a connector, it enables you to schedule Claude to run tasks on a daily cadence, on a weekly, something, end of day, things like that. You no longer have to copy and paste a transcript. for that context, it's there available because Grain is now an approved Claude connector. And then finally, it allows us, again, to combine the Grain with those other tools and capabilities. So we'll cover each of these really quickly, but just wanted to make it clear how and where you should go to connect Grain. You want to go to what's considered your directory, and there's a list called connectors. I believe it's under Customize, and you'll see inside of Claude there's a Customize tab in the left-hand sidebar, and you'll want to click Connectors and then search for Grain, and you'll see Grain here, and you can just click Grain and then hit Connect. It'll ask you to sign in with your Grain account, and then once it's signed in, it'll now be in your connector, your approved connectors, and you can use it at any time. So it's just a one-click setup. You hit connect and sign in, and then Grain is officially connected to your Claude account.
I might jump in and just add there's a slight nuance if you are on the Claude for Business or Workspace account that your Claude administrator needs to approve Grain as a installable app, and then each individual person needs to go through this workflow to connect it once the admin has approved it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And I went through this with a customer just the other day, and so if you do click on it, you can request it of the admin, and it'll say like you can hit request, and it'll notify them that you've requested it. So if you'd like to connect it, I'd recommend either notifying your admin or just clicking connect or clicking the request on the Grain app itself. So once it's connected, what does it have access to? So this is where the meeting data that Grain is connected to is your meeting data. Even though on Grain Business, or I mean on Claude, Team and Claude Enterprise, you need to connect it at the workspace level. Like Mike said, you have to individually connect it. And so what we are accessing is just your meeting data. So what you've recorded and what you have access to. This doesn't give you the ability to access everything, but it does give you the opportunity to access your meeting data and the meetings that have been shared with you. So in here, I wanted to also kind of talk about some of the things that we have available that we could do with this meeting data, things like daily action items. And we'll get more into these and really talk about these workflows, but just kind of preemptively chatting about them, like things that you can do is, hey, pull every meeting I attended, or pre-call brief. I'm meeting with so-and-so. What happened on the last call? Or something such as post-call. So you don't even need to say Grain meeting. It literally can just be said as my meeting. And I've seen that Claude is totally capable of identifying that you said meeting and that it can then generate based on that. It knows to go and find it. It knows to use the MCP tools to extract that information. So this is done inside of Claude, and it's very easy to do. So the amazing thing that I've been able to accomplish, or that I've been really loving, is working with Claude Cowork on reoccurring tasks. Because it's connector now, you can set it up to do reoccurring things. So previously, if you had to paste the transcript, it would, you couldn't set it up to do something on a schedule. But now with Grain as a Claude connector, you can do things such as set up a recurring task for it to summarize your Grain meetings, or pull in all my meetings from the last 24 hours, build an action items, or just a weekly customer feedback roundup call. So those are things that you can do with Claude Cowork, and later on, I will walk you guys through one of those that I've built and show you exactly how to build a task in Claude Cowork. So the final thing to cover is just, what is it that we can do with the Grain tools and capabilities that give us cross tool. So that's something that is really great about the amount of connectors that Claude has, is that not only can you do, just Grain meetings, but you can also do Grain to HubSpot, Grain to Slack, Grain to Linear, Grain to Gmail, and really start connecting, pairing these connectors together because of the, app store or connector directory that they have to take things from one tool into another or combine data across multiple tools to produce an output. So you could build a deal pipeline review. You can have daily feature requests. You can turn customer calls into tickets. You can draft, follow-up emails in your, in your voice. So lots of really great things you can do with the different tools and capabilities that Claude connector plus Grain connector, or Grain connector plus the Claude directory. So those are really quickly the capabilities I wanted to cover. And now we'll kind of shift from here into some of the examples that we wanted to walk through, some real use cases of how this works, and how we are using the Grain MCP and connector to build. So first off, I wanted to kind of tee this up or turn the time over to Mike, our co-founder here at Grain, and have Mike walk through what he has built. And yeah, I'll turn it over to you, Mike, and let you take it from here. Mike, you're on mute. Thanks.
Lovely. Follow the mute. All right, let me share my screen. So I think the most interesting thing to look at here is this is what's becoming called the kind of Andrej Karpathy knowledge graph. So traditionally, folks have been using embedding models to create patterns and themes out of raw, unstructured text. But basically what I've kind of created here is this concept of a vault that has a bunch of projects. One of my projects is a productivity project that uses my Grain API key and syncs this information. I'm going to show an MCP specific workflow after this, but this one is more for like the API. And then it will basically bring and pull all of those meeting transcripts into this kind of raw processing. That's how this kind of concept works. You can bring any, PowerPoint document, whatever else. And so I automatically, I have basically a little server here that listens for Grain webhooks and then brings over the transcripts into my wiki for any of the meetings that I have attended. And so then I have kind of a processing flow where these are all the pending compile. And then inside of Claude Code, again, this is a bit more of an advanced workflow. It is, I created a skill that basically kind of compiles all of those new meetings that come in. And then this is the knowledge graph that ultimately results from all of that. It's making connections across my Grain meetings, both ones that I attended and ones that I didn't attend that were in my workspace that I have access to. And then why this is so powerful is because now I have this wiki, which is the output of this work. So now I have a wiki that has a bunch of different kind of themes that come up throughout my various Grain meetings that are coming and getting ingested. And as I do the compile of new meetings that come in that contribute to the graph, it's going through and making connections. So an example of that is like we have our board meetings. And so these are the kind of specific topics. This one kind of grouped it off of those meetings, but maybe a better one is something like Grain strategy. So these articles, these topics are being generated off of the content that was discussed in various Grain meetings. And then they're connected to each other from the processing flow. So the large language model will ingest the raw transcripts. process them, yeah, and according to kind of their themes or the patterns, and recognizing this existing wiki that I have, and then it will make new contributions and new links. And so this graph is continually growing as I have new meetings and I process those meetings in my graph. And then the end result of that, which is one of the more interesting things to see, is I have a bunch of different projects. Like, for example, this is a marketing project where these are the artifacts that I generated. And so we can look at something like, frankly, some of the slides that are in Ben's deck came from this flow where it leveraged the wiki, this knowledge of my ongoing kind of almost a representation of my brain, to then achieve the task, which was to create a kind of narrative arc. I gave it like a template to follow, and then it used the knowledge that's being integrated into the wiki to generate this slide that ended up in Ben's presentation earlier today, or earlier this presentation. And so that is just one of dozens of workflows that I would say this is kind of the most like power user version of Grain that is driven by I would say more the API than the MCP, but it is in this kind of Claude world. And I tend to use Claude Code for much more than just coding because it is just so powerful. But I'll share one more kind of workflow that is using just like the Claude chat app that is purely MCP based, but can kind of pause. Ben, looked like you might have had a interjection there real quick.
No, Mike, I mean, I am just the power of this is, I just want to comment on the power of
It's crazy.
it. It is crazy, and the things that Mike is building,
It's
um,
just
is just, the speed that he's doing it and the quality of the output is really, enabled by the context that these grain
Mhm.
meetings have, and
It's
then
all about the
it
context
just
engineering, yeah.
yeah, and that's all I wanted to say is that it comes back to that context layer, like the slideshows. It's just so powerful with what we have. Um,
I know it's a bit chilling because I founded the company 8 years ago and had this vision. But literally the like pitch deck was, meeting data is the most underutilized asset that companies are sleeping on. This was in 2018, right? And then remote work push, and now, the large language model driven. It's crazy now that that original vision is finally being realized in ways that I didn't even honestly imagine were possible, but knew that the data itself was so valuable. And that's why we started Grain. And like, I would say of this knowledge graph of me doing these types of workflows, 60% of the inputs to the wiki are coming from my Grain meetings. It is the most important input into my workflows. Share Slack is helpful, email is helpful, HubSpot is helpful, but honestly, it's the turning the unstructured nature of really critical decisions, discussions, themes, topics, strategies that are happening in live meetings, customer calls, into something that my large language model, Claude Code in this case, has access to and can use and is on demand. It just generates dramatically better outputs than anything I've ever done before. And to be frank, this workflow I just demoed I think I made it last week. Like, it's maybe 7 days old. So anyway, I want to show one more that's a little bit more kind of like, I would say, simple. Is that we had a moment of kind of like of alignment or misalignment yesterday. And I knew exactly what meeting I said what I wanted to reiterate. And recently we shipped in our MCP the ability for Claude to have a little tool ingrained. The tools are down here. So if you look into connectors, and then you go to Grain, you can actually see like they're actually a little deeper in manage connectors. You can see access to like basically what can the Grain MCP do? Like, what is it capable of doing? It's fetching meetings, it's fetching transcripts, action items, but we actually recently added the ability to do more action-oriented things and actually create a clip. So inside of this, workflow, oops, let me go back. I said, hey, there was this meeting. Can you go find that meeting for me? It was 3 months ago. And then I also have the Slack MCP connected. And I said, here's a Slack where we're finding some misalignment. Can you go find that clip for me? So it went through, made the clip, and now I have the clip. And then it helped me draft a message because I have the Slack MCP as well with that clip in it that's helping to like kind of drive this alignment. And then I said, hey, you know what? Actually, I have an amplitude MCP here as well where our like product data is. I was like, I don't know if I'm like really that confident in this conclusion that I've reached. Can you go and do some research for me in amplitude? It also has the Figma connector. I forgot about that one. Can you go find these files for this project this is related to in Figma and go and find some specifics to fill in my gaps that I need to be able to like have confidence to send this message? So it went through, did all of that work, analyzed the data. There's always a lot there, and then generated some reports, and then finally is asking me where should all of this work go? Should we go put it in the Slack channel? Should we send a DM? Like now that we have like a strong conclusion, where do we want to like close this workflow loop? And so I haven't obviously finished this yet because I got distracted. This was yesterday. And so I need to just make a choice. And then that finishes the workflow for me that frankly wouldn't have been possible like, I don't know, 3 months ago. It's crazy.
Mike, there's some really good questions in the chat. If you would just scroll through those and just a couple of them, I'd love for you to answer that I'm not able to answer. I think Daniel's on and Eric and Katie, just a couple of those on in the chat, I think would be really interesting to get your response to.
Yeah, for sure. So start with Daniel. Just list of practical high level knowledge, go through each one, build a presentation. Sorry, I'm having a hard time processing what Daniel's asking. I'll get back to that one. Someone wants to process it and catch me up.
Mike, this is Daniel.
Yeah, hi.
I'm the knowledge graph is obviously very awesome and very intense. I just wanted to like envision the most common use cases of it that are
Oh, yeah,
driving
yeah.
high value. Build a presentation, obviously help you with an internal dispute you were having is one you just gave. Could you just speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, totally. So for me, it's like I just built like a sales deck. I'm going to answer Adrian. I got yours one. I'll answer yours next. So I've got after this meeting, I'm going over to an enterprise client that's a friend of mine that they've been implemented Grain and we're getting them on an enterprise install. And so I'll share a couple of more specific examples. Is this desktop one? There we go. So the knowledge graph becomes an input. So this is maybe a little bit more technical, but there's these things called hooks inside of Claude Code. And these are pre-tool use, post-tool use, etc. So what I've done is I have my Claude. Basically, this whole thing started really, really simple. It started with just a Claude file that explained how this kind of Kaparthi, I'll send out the tweet after this, but it's like Andrish, put this out there. I was like, hey, I want to try that. And it's been really, really helpful. So it starts with a Claude file that basically Claude Code will read this file every time you start a new session. And so then it started much more simple than this, but it basically has 3 folders. It was like raw and wiki, and I can't even remember what the other folder, and output. So output's the really simple folder to where it will leverage the knowledge of the wiki. So you basically go, let me put things I want to put into the wiki into raw, and then we'll compile and process that using a large language model into the graph. And then every time I have a new Claude Code session, I use this hooks that basically make sure that it knows about the wiki. Because sometimes I found, well, the Claude MD file should tell it about the wiki. I'm also using hooks to make sure that it knows about the wiki. It does add a little bit of context bloat, but the way that I found it to be the most efficient is I have this master index, which isn't that big, 56 lines. And it's basically telling Claude Code like kind of the gist or the map to the territory of all the knowledge that it could explore. So no matter what workflow I'm working on, maybe it's a sales deck, maybe it's a framework kind of analytics strategy. Like, so I have like a project for product analytics I've been doing this week. It knows how to basically traverse the graph and go and get that knowledge and then use that context to produce much better outputs without me having to explicitly redo the context engineering every single time I start a new Claude Code session. But that wasn't your actual question. Your actual question was examples of outputs. So like an example is, here, we'll use this one.
Welcome back to the Cordial Media YouTube channel.
Somebody's playing a YouTube video. So this is one of the prospects. And these are all of the outputs. I was trying to kind of get to the bedrock truth of what is going on with this account. And so then ultimately I did all of that and then produced a deck, a sales deck that is ready for, you know, presentation in literally an hour from now. I'll be presenting this deck. And so that's an example there. But I find, so I've expanded my workflow to have this projects concept on across kind of functional area. And then inside, so like my meeting sync one that I did to bring the Grain meetings in here is, I just had Claude Code build that with the API key, really simple. You just put your API key in an environmental variable, make sure it's in your get ignore so it doesn't, you know, leak into the world. And then I created like a Slack 0 one, but my more so the marketing one that I showed has been really, really helpful. But also like product analytics has been really helpful as well to have this knowledge in this wiki as I'm like doing kind of deeper research on our activation workflows, our sign up workflows. So I create these kind of projects inside of the same folder that has access to the wiki, and then I have Claude Code like help me, you know, work on the projects. And then the wiki is a knowledge input into the creation of those work products. But it's literally infinite. I'm coming up with like 3 or 4 new projects a day. My only problem is the time to kind of finish them. To answer Adrian's question, hi Adrian. Adrian's a longtime OG, awesome power user of Grain. I'm still working on the next level up and figuring that out. I have my foundation, my hypotheses. There's a bunch of different teams out here. You know, Ramp produced a really cool blog post about how they're doing this at a knowledge level, like Block XYZ, which is you know, Jack from Twitter. They've had a lot of things there. I'm starting at a personal level, and then we're going to move it more to the team level. So this isn't yet like a team level asset. And there's a bunch of like kind of trade-offs that you have to consider in that as well, of like there's benefits to things being a bit more private, right? Benefits being a bit more tailored specifically to me, because the more bloat you add to the graph, the more potential kind of there is to get things right, but there's also potential to get things wrong. And so I'm kind of experimenting and figuring out what that right level is yet. I would say my like initial hypothesis, one of the first things I'm going to push to like the Grain shared team is this idea of a voice of the customer shared vault. So it'll be the Grain voice of the customer vault, trained off all the Grain sales calls, intercom Slack messages, emails, you know, sales emails, and it will be breaking it into kind of the themes of constant feedback and iteration, positive, negative, opportunities to improve things, voice of the customer clips that will allow us to be able to, you know, share this indexed understanding of the voice of the customer. And it'll be primarily driven off of Grain, but Grain will be one of many inputs into that. So that's one that I'm going to produce at like a team level. Are there other questions? Feel free to just like unmute and chime in if you have more questions, because I think we're going to turn it over to Jeff after this.
Yep, Mike. Yeah, if you'll just respond to a couple of those in the chat. But yeah, thank you so much, Mike. This opened my eyes to what's the possibility here. And I'm gonna turn it over to Jeff. I'm gonna share my screen just here for a second. What Jeff is going to be covering is some of the things that he's using and covering some of the prompts he's building to create these co-work reoccurring tasks, kind of like what Mike showed in how he's using Claude in the prompter to find things. But this is Jeff, our CEO, and he's built a daily kind of engineering daily digest. But yeah, I'll turn it over to you. If you want to walk through your slides, and then you can share any examples you would like on your own screen.
Ben. I've been reading the chat and wanted to just maybe pause on this slide for a second and cover just a few things. So one one way I think about using AI in your work is, you can call it like 4 levels. One level is just doing one-off tasks. You have very simple things like, I just finished my meeting, can you help me draft a follow-up email? I heard someone mention wanting just to kind of learn a little bit about how to think about writing prompts and stuff like this. So I'm going to just kind of give examples. So for this type of use case, I think very simple, straightforward prompts will work very well. The second level is using skills. So a skill is simply just a set of instructions to give to an AI agent on how to do a task. That's how I think about it, or how to do a series of tasks. And the way that I've had the most, there's a lot of different ways to do skills. There's directories of there you can find. One of the things that I found the most efficient is just in simple, clear, straight language, open up Claude 4.7 or 4.6, or ChatGPT, their latest model, and just say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you help me write a set of very clear instructions so that I can do this work on a recurring basis and give it to an agent, and put it in a markdown file. That's typically what I'll say. And usually if I'm very clear about what I'm trying to do in the instructions, usually that first pass is pretty strong. Sometimes it'll be off a little bit and I'll read it and say, actually, I think this needs to be done, or you missed this. And so you go back and forth until you have a really, really clear set of instructions in Markdown. And then you can then save it as a skill to be used in the future. And if folks are not sure about how to save as a skill, we can send a little bit more about how to do that. If you're working just in Claude Code, Claude Code can just do it for you. If the easiest, by the way, Claude Code I find can be a bit intimidating for folks, because a lot of people don't use the terminal regularly. But I found that if you download just Visual Studio Code, it's free, and just use the Claude Code plugin, that it really just feels like you're using kind of any other app. And the nice thing about Claude Code is it has access to your terminal tools, so it can do really simple things like updating files, saving files, moving files, and so it can just save skills automatically for you. So that's the second level. The third level is call like scheduled tasks. These are things that you want to have work on a recurring basis, and that's what I'm going to be showing here in just 1 second. 2 great ways to do scheduled or recurring tasks that happen a fixed period every day are to do them in Claude Cowork. That's a feature I'll show here in a second. Or you can, the one downside of Claude Cowork is the task has to run with your laptop up. So a lot of times if you're out of town, or maybe it's a weekend, or it's busy and you're in meetings and your laptop's down, the tasks will fail and they won't run for the day. I'm sure at some point Claude will change that, but that's a current limitation. So another way to do recurring tasks is just to deploy Vercel. Is a very, very simple way you can deploy cron jobs, and they can run on the cloud. And then the last kind of fourth and maybe most complex level is what Mike was just showing, which is kind of what I call it like trigger-based workflows. These are workflows that are triggered by specific, not by a time recurring, but by some kind of thing happening. So for example, the workflow Mike just shared was a trigger based on a meeting in Grain being completed. And there's all sorts of triggers you could imagine. A ticket is moved to completed in Linear, do these other things. Triggers are a bit more complicated because usually you have to use APIs to set them up. So Mike's workflow, he's using the Grain API to get our webhooks. The Grain API has webhooks that'll trigger when a meeting is completed. The other thing that I've been using that's pretty, I'd say, accessible once you get into Claude Code is the Zapier SDK. And the Grain Zapier integration actually provides a lot of these triggers. And so that could be like an accessible way into triggers and building some of this stuff. If you don't want to, do your own API integration, is using the Zapier Grain integration and then the Zapier SDK. And you can Zapier, the SDK, I think, is just about to ship triggers to public. So that's coming here very soon, is something maybe worth looking at. All right, with that preamble, I'll just dive into this digest. So for those who, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, but for those who are not, I'll just share my screen and show you this is Claude scheduled tasks. It's a feature that allows you to schedule something to happen on a weekly, daily, or otherwise time basis. This is a task that I have. It's called an engineering daily brief. It's a way that I use to kind of keep up with what's going on in engineering. And as we have a fast moving engineering team, I think a lot of times in companies, people will use, leaders will use stand-ups as a way to sort of serve them and not necessarily serve the team. And so at Grain, for example, we only have 3 stand-ups a week. And this is a way for me to kind of know what's going on without necessarily having to have, you know, a daily 30-minute meeting just to meet my needs of being able to figure out what's going on. So that's kind of how I use this. And as you can see, I have it as a daily recurring task. You can see I have the skill instructions here. Again, I think I wrote these skill instructions with AI and have just been iterating on them. My encouragement for you is just to try it, get it moving, and then you're going to iterate as you go. And that's why I kind of like using AI to write these skills, because it's easy to go back to the chat where you originally drafted the skill and said, hey, that didn't work quite the way I want it to. This time I want it to do this or add this, and it'll easily just rebuild it for you and add what's missing. Ben, do you want to share back the deck here for a quick minute? Or maybe I could share it on my screen too, but
It's okay. I got it.
okay. So this is go back to the last slide. This is I have it running once a day. It pulls from Linear and from Slack. And then we'll post a message to myself. This is a tip that I really like, is sending DMs to yourself using the Claude MCP as canvases. Canvases are a way that allow you to basically draft markdown files inside of Slack. So if you want to go to the next slide, Ben. So basically what it does, it pulls the daily ticket movement from Linear. It looks at what people said they were going to do or what they talked about doing in Grain stand-ups. It compares commitments relative to delivery to kind of say maybe where things didn't move. Again, this is not to be punitive, but we're a high accountability culture and we like to move things along and quickly identify blockers or needed decisions. And then it'll flag patterns, risks, or blockers. It surfaces things that I'm blocking where maybe people had questions for me that I haven't answered in Slack or in Linear comments. And then it saves it as a persistent markdown file to keep context from previous briefings. So it kind of can look across multiple briefings and put the current update into the most recent run. And then it sends me a Slack DM. So Ben, if you go to the next slide, this is an example of what it looks like when I get it in Slack. I kind of, I love my team, so I made this anonymous and no one here is called out. So, but it gives you an idea of what it does. It kind of tells you what the signals were, what moved, what stuck. It tells you high accountability flags, like maybe some issues, gives positive shout outs, and then flag specific things to look into. And then there's a link to the bigger canvas with the full brief. So this is one of, I probably have 12, maybe too many, but 12 recurring tasks going on in Quark. I find them to be very, very helpful and very accessible.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. I wanted to go over, walk through live how I recently just built one of these for my own pre-meeting kind of prep work. So I'm going to share my my Claude app here. So and I'll kind of walk through exactly what it is that, how easy it is to kind of build one of these. So, and to be 100% honest, this prompt, I iterated to this prompt with Claude itself. So I didn't even write all this, but I'm just kind of giving structure for how, simple it is to kind of create one of these skills in Claude Cowork. So what I'm doing here is, I'm building a daily meeting prep skill that runs each morning and does the following: pulls today's meetings from my Google Calendar. I sometimes have all day events or blocks on the calendar. So I only want essentially like events with external attendees. For each meeting where it finds on my calendar, I want it to search Grain. So go into the Grain connector and find the past 3 recordings with the same attendees. So if there are correlated meetings here, I want to have kind of prep for those. Create clips. This is a great thing that Grain can do, or the Grain connector can do, is it can go in and find timestamps of relevant moments, and the MCP can create those clips for you automatically. Write a structured brief for each meeting, themes, action items, follow-ups to raise, sentence prep notes, past calls referenced. So just some, general information that I would want about the previous meetings, and then post the full brief to, my private Slack channel, and, keep each meeting as its own clearly separated section, and then, write it well informed. So be specific, keep it tight, things like that. So then what, Claude Cowork will do, it'll ask some clarifying questions. So this is, the prompt I gave. It's like, which Slack channel? What time should this be run? How should we create the clips? And for each of these, it'll list 1, 2, 3. It'll give you some options. You can click them. It's pretty simple. It's like answering a form fill. And then I said I'll provide the channel, and it says what's the Slack channel. In Slack, you can get the channel ID. And now that it has all this, it'll go through and find the different tools that it'll need, create the files, and then here at the end, all you have to do is hit save skill, and that is now I have a daily meeting prep skill. Couple lines here, and all of a sudden I have a prep meeting skill that'll run, and then I'm able to see all these, and let's see, can I pull up the this is not very I just because we're here, I'm not going to pull up Slack, but essentially it found this upcoming meeting. It's a first time call, no Grain history, so those are some of the things that it can do. And then some of our upcoming meetings, different action items from the past meeting. So this is what will get sent to me daily. And this is how, kind of simple it is to do it. And I have skills and tasks for lots of different type of things. And what I wanted to cover with, a bit of the time we have left here is some examples that we've gathered from our customers on how they are using the Grain MCP. So a couple of real examples from our customers. One is what pretty much I just covered, which is this pre-call brief. Similar to what Jeff is doing, this is really where we're seeing customers get a lot of help is, hey, I want the context. This is a sales company or sales lead that we gathered this from, where they're startup, they've had sales conversations. I want the context. Let's pull all the Grain recordings for a prospect, including ones, anything that she has access to. Write a pre-call brief. Then, let's scan sales calls for certain triggers, phrases, and then fire that into a structured Slack response with the deal data attached. So that's another way we can auto fire requests. So you could build a skill that says, hey, I want to, on a weekly, go look for these phrases. Where are they coming up? And then push, attach the deal data to that and then share that to me. And then finally, the demo coaching feedback here. Let's look at the, recorded demos, and we'll personalize and, let's give feedback, do some coaching based on those calls. What this person's getting is 7 to 8 hours of, deal prep a week saved. They're, 100% committed demos are like, they're seeing that on every call. They're capturing feature requests from every call. This information's all getting, funneled back to them. So this is one example. Another example, post-call admin work. This is a huge one. Is after a call, Claude, using those triggers that Mike has talked about, is we can create triggers for when a call ends. Take the Grain transcript, extract contents, update the client CRM or the CRM record. End of day cleanup. This is a scheduled cowork task. Generate task list, book committed meetings, so create calendar events and flag recurring topics. And then a great thing that Grain can do is generate playlists inside of Grain. So you can use the Grain MCP to connect multiple meetings and put them into a playlist, and then you can get that link and share it in a email follow-up or something like that. So it's a useful little skill, MCP skill, that is, or tool that we've just recently made available, is ability to generate playlists inside of Grain. So and playlists are a great way to share a collection of meetings. So if you have 3 or 4 meetings with a customer and you want to share all those with just one link, you don't have to share like 3, 4 separate meeting links. You can just put them into a playlist and share that one link. And it's a shared kind of folder you can share with the customer of all the meetings you've had with them. So 60 to 100 minutes saved on this kind of post-call admin work, making sure the action items, no dropped action items here. So, and then the final one here is really thinking about this is like from a customer success is, what's our weekly activity, client status. Again, another kind of pre-call one here that's a customer is using. Let's look up the history. What's our history with this? Pull the last 6 months. This is what this person is doing last 6 months. And then a great thing to have is just a sales to CS handoff, analyzes the sales cycles, Grain recordings, produces a handoff document with KPIs, red flags, things like that. So this is how a customer client delivery is using the Grain connector to build things to help them automate or just kind of build these workflows. So those are some customer examples. Just at the end here, wanted to share a couple prompts to try. We really want you to get out there and explore these capabilities. So a couple things to try. Morning prep. This is a great one. We've covered this a lot in detail here, but it's really, I think, how we're seeing tons of customers find value is you have had previous meetings, you're gonna have a meeting. Let's connect that data so you can get ready for each call. So pull every meeting I have today. Each give me one paragraph brief covering the relationship status, last conversation, what to bring up. Just super simple. After call, pull my last call, draft a follow-up email. Then we could do something such as a weekly. Scan every customer call from the last 7 days, surface feature requests, group them by frequency and post to a Slack channel. And then finally, deal context. Deliver, if you want sales deal context, create a brief, create a sales response, sales methodology kind of output, and then any next steps, things like that. So definitely encourage you to go try some of these. Find one that uses it, fits your use case, and but also we would love to help you here. So that's kind of this. Grain experts. We understand we have a lot of experience with this, and so we really do want to be a guide and an expert for you. We would love to meet with you to help you set up the Grain connector. We will be sending out a follow-up email after this, and I'll include this Calendly link. But also, I'll paste it in the chat right now. Please feel free to just book a call with us. And oh, my colleague Ella beat me to it. Thanks, Ella. But yeah, we would love to meet with you, help you build your workflows using the Grain connector. Couple things to note, just it does require a pro, team, or enterprise plan. Coworks included with that on Claude, and then we just you can use Grain via the MCP on any of our plans, and then once you're signed in and connected, it'll work properly. So please book a time with us. We would love to share how best to use the Grain connector and really just kind of brainstorm with you what workflows you can create for your use case, so that you get the most out of Grain and Claude. So, Jeff, anything you'd like to say?
I just so great seeing in the chat what people are building. We love seeing that as a team. We love building Grain and helping you all be successful in your work and save time. Gives us a lot of meetings. So keep sharing. And for people, I mentioned this a few times. A few people have said that they're building really great things, and we started this new effort where we want to spotlight our customers who are building amazing things, and so we'd love to chat. It's a win-win because we get to learn how you're using it, which helps us improve our capabilities and understand where the gaps are and how we can push it further. But we also get to highlight you and the amazing things you're building. So would just want to know you're doing that, and I think we want to reach out to a few of you so we can talk about what you're building.
Thanks, Jeff. And my team, Tebby and Ella, will be staying on for a couple minutes to answer any urgent Q&A. But please, we just encourage you. The best way to speak with us is to book time with us. Please use that Calendly link. But we'll stay on for a couple extra minutes, answer a couple more questions, answer some questions. But thank you so much for joining and being a part of this webinar today.
Ben, should we go through some of the Q&A explicitly for people who want to stay on? Yes,
I would love that, Jeff.
So I flagged a few ones that I think we answered, but it might be helpful just explicitly. Who has access? What meetings does the MCP have access to?
Yeah, Jeff, that's a good question. So the MCP, because each individual connects it personally, it has access to the meetings that you have access to. So whether that's meetings you recorded, or meetings that you attended or that were shared to you. It is not, the Claude admin needs to approve the connector, but each individual person needs to connect the Grain to their own Grain account. And then at that point, we will just have access to your meetings. So it's anything that you can see in Grain will be able to be used, but you will not be able to see the entire catalog of meetings. Your colleagues' personal meetings are safe from the Grain MCP.
Makes sense. And then what if I want to pull videos and not just the transcripts? How should I do that?
So the Grain MCP has the ability to create clips, as well as link out to the meeting. But maybe Jeff, maybe I'm misunderstanding your question here. Are you referring to what was shared?
If I want to be able to pull the full video content, download it, I got to use the API, right? I have to, and we can talk to customer support.
Correct. Yeah, thank you. But do want to just highlight again that clips functionality. The Grain MCP has the ability to create clips. Those are shared back to you as a link that you need to open up. You can't play them directly in Claude, but it does have the ability to generate smaller, shorter form clips from directly through the MCP.
This one came up a lot. What if I want to use a trigger to do something after every call?
So yeah, triggers, like you said, Jeff, earlier, and Mike's example, triggers can be used through the API, but also through tools such as Zapier. Those tools can track for triggers such as meeting finished, meeting uploaded, things like that. And the Zapier SDK is a great way to kind of access those triggers. We call them webhooks. So when a webhook fires, you can have that be a trigger. But Claude Cowork is a great way to generate tasks that reoccurring on a daily basis. So if you want, instead of triggering, you could just do something on the daily. that pulls those meetings on that frequency that Claude makes available.
Amazing. And then if I want to join a community where I can learn more about this and see what other people are building, what should I do?
Yeah, we have a great Grain community. We host it in Slack, and if Ella or Tebby could post that invite link in our chat right now, that'd be awesome. But yeah, we have recently created even a new community inside of our Slack channel for MCP use cases. It's getting a lot of activity. Power users and individuals are posting in there pretty much every day how they're using the Grain MCP. So please join our Slack community and then join the channel MCP use cases for those to connect with other Grain users, and then and I'll follow up actually in the follow-up email to this with that Slack community link as well. We'd love for you to join.
Amazing.
Yeah, I've added a few people. I put it in the chat, and we have a few people who have sent their emails already and have been added. And as Ben said, if it's easier, we're going to add the link to the follow-up email from this with the recording. And just a quick one here. I don't think anyone should be scared of building anything. I am not that technical, but I get Claude to do whatever I want. I just get in there, tell it what I want, and then try it out. So please don't feel like this is you need to be extremely technical to do anything. No, just your words. I think the key is know what you want and then ask for it in Claude, and it will build a skill for you. So no intimidation, no, please feel free to just tell it what you want.
And schedule time with us. Book a time with us. We want to be, we want to be there to help you build those use cases.